Hey everyone, Nicholas here and welcome back to my channel. Alright, in this video, I'll talk about living costs as a student in Singapore. Actually, I did one such video back then, actually it's last year, but it's in Bahasa, so I thought maybe I can just do another one in English. It might be useful, So for this video, I will try to also give the context because I believe that, living cost is quite a tricky thing. Everyone has kind of like different lifestyle, and depending on your lifestyle, you have different kind of spending. You might require different kind of budget. So that's why when I'm coming out with the numbers in this video, I will also give you guys the context and also explain to you guys how I came up, how I derived the numbers. So yeah, so then you can just adjust accordingly based on your lifestyle. Alright, so in terms of the data, for data related to school, the context related to school, what I know right now might only be for that of NUS and NTU because I'm just familiar with both these schools, so that's it. But generally I would say this video will still be applicable for those in other going to other schools. Generally you can still try to guess and estimate from there. Also, if you're not a student, you're just maybe you're looking for a job here, maybe some of the information that I'm giving here will still be a bit relevant. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about it. Alright, so first off, let's talk about accommodation costs. So I would say accommodation cost is very likely to be the largest chunk or largest part of your living cost. It's very likely to be the largest part. And for on-campus or off-campus accommodation, the price will be different. Quite different, I would say, especially in terms of NTU and NUS. Because let's say if you're staying at school dorm at NUS or NTU, typically the price will be half that of an off-campus accommodation with comparable facilities, I would say. So yeah, generally it's cheaper at school, and I think also depending on your school, some schools they have dorms, some schools don't have it, and also the ones that have the NUS and NTU, they also have some sort of regulation. So for instance, at NUS, I believe the same for NTU as well in this case. So for international students at NUS and NTU, we are actually guaranteed 2 years of school accommodation. As far as I know, NTU also have the same regulation. I'm quite sure NUS still have it right now. And yeah, so basically what that means is that as an international student at NUS, we are guaranteed 2 years of accommodation at school. And after that 2 years, we could still stay at school, of course, but it means that you need to do some sort of CCA or some sort of activities or contribution to the school clubs, things like that, in order for you to guarantee a place for your 3rd year or 4th year of stay. So that's typically how it works at NUS. I believe the same or similar procedure they have at NTU as well. So yeah, some other schools they might have their own regulations, so I would suggest you guys to directly check on their website. I believe they should have the information up there in their website regarding the accommodation. Alright, so for NUS dorm, if it's a single room, typically it will cost around $500. Actually, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's like 470-ish per month. So this is for single room, no aircon, that's it, single room, no aircon, and common bathroom. So typically for the bathroom, it is usually for all the halls, usually at least you will have one shared bathroom per floor. So typically that's the arrangement. Of course, different hall at NUS or different accommodation at NUS, they have sort of like a little bit different in terms of that arrangement, but that is quite general, and the prices are varies a bit, I would say, varies a bit, but typically it's on the range of 470-ish to like 500, that kind, per month. That's inclusive of like your Wi-Fi, utilities and everything already. So basically you're just renting a room and it's comfort, I would say. You got a bed, you got if you are curious, you can actually check some of my vlogs. I did some vlogs in my room back then when I'm staying at NUS. So typically you get a bed, you have cupboard, you have a desk, chair, quite standard, I would say. So those are inclusive. And regarding the accommodation, I believe for NUS it's a bit tricky because the dorm, we have sort of like 3 different kind of dorms. Like one is called residential college, one is called hall, another one is just a residence, which is Prince George Park Residence or PGPR. I will not dive too deep into that because it's not that relevant to our title or this video. You guys can actually just check that out in the website on NUS. Just Google it up. They have it. The explanation on their website, so you guys can just check out what are the differences. In fact, I think you can also find quite a number of forums that discuss the differences and the pros and cons of each. And for single aircon room, I think it will cost around 500 to 600 each. Again, varies depending on the hall, but I think it's close to 600 per month. But the electricity of the aircon is not inclusive, so meaning that you need to pay extra for the number of hours you use the aircon. Typically, it comes in, I think generally it will be in two types. There are two types. One is where you go to the management to top up some sort of credit for your aircon that you can use. Usually it's hourly rate. I think most of them are hourly rate. Or another way is that they will give you like a card, that kind, where you can just, sort of like using the EasyLink card or MRT card. It works similarly. You just plug it into the machine, and every time you turn on your aircon, you just deduct your credit from there. So typically they'll have some sort of hourly rate. I'm not too sure about how much you will pay per hour. It won't be that expensive as far as I know, if you open it up for a couple of hours every day. But again, just check it out in the website. I believe they will have the most updated prices there. I don't have it with me right now, and yeah, but anyway, so yeah, and those are for single aircon or non-aircon room. We also have double room, which is basically 2% in one room. And for double room, usually the price is half that of the single room. That's how it is for NUS, and I believe for NTU is quite similar as well in terms of the arrangement and also in terms of the prices. I think in NTU it might be slightly cheaper again because of the location. NUS is more central and NTU is somewhere on the west, so I think, if I'm not mistaken, the prices of the dorm there is a bit cheaper compared to NUS due to the location, I believe. So yeah, that's that. And for NUS case, actually most of the room I would say is single non-aircon. I believe that's the most common room that we have at NUS, and some halls they have only limited number of aircon rooms, so you might want to check which hall you're going into. Depending on the hall, they might have priority for maybe the returning student or stuff like that. So just make sure you check on the website in terms of number of rooms that they have. But yeah, it's safe to say that I would say typically at NUS the most common room is single non-aircon. That's the most common room. For NTU, I think they have more aircon room. I think they have more aircon room. I'm not 100% sure because I never actually go and look for the I never compared the data exactly, but as far as I know, most of my friends staying in NTU, they're staying in aircon room. But most of my friends, for us, where we are staying at NUS, we are staying in non-aircon room, and typically we are staying in single non-aircon room. Whereas for my friends at NTU, typically they are staying in a double room with aircon. So that's just how it is, I would say. So again, do double check it on their website. Alright, so for off-campus accommodation, I guess this is applicable for you guys who don't want to stay at school, or who's maybe your school don't have any dorm, or you are just coming here for work. Then you don't have the option to stay at school dorm, meaning you need to stay off campus. For off campus, I would say the prices varies quite a lot. You get quite a huge range, but it's still, I would say, more expensive than what you pay compared to school dorm. So I would say for comparable facilities or comparable quality, it will be around 500 to 100, 500 to 1,200, 1,200. Sorry, let me repeat. So the range will be around from 500 to 1,200 per month. So that's what you can expect to pay monthly for your rent. This is for the context if you are renting a room, not renting a flat, not renting like an HDB apartment like in the entirety, but you just rent a room. So if you're just renting a room, just like how you typically will do if you're staying at on-campus accommodation in a dorm, which is just a room basically. So you are expected to pay 500 to 1,200 off campus. And again, the prices varies a lot depending on your location, your building condition, your facilities and stuff like that. So it varies a lot, but maybe let me give you a bit of context. So I would say for off-campus accommodation, typically if you are talking about a comparable quality, the building condition of comparable quality to that you can find on school dorm, I would say at least it is $500 per month with aircon. So but it's double room, so it's a double room. If it's a double room with aircon, you can expect to pay like around $500 each per month. So as you can see here, it is much more pricier than that if you're staying on campus, because on campus, if you pay around $500, you can already get single room, even though you don't have aircon in that room. So that's what you can expect to pay. And for around like $500 to $600 at school, you can already get single room and with aircon. So yeah, so that's what you can expect to pay off campus. But usually for off campus accommodation, usually if you're renting a room, typically you don't need to pay the utilities anymore. Usually it's inclusive. Usually your utilities are already inclusive. But this is slightly different if you're renting the whole flat, and renting the whole flat is much more expensive, and utilities you have to cover on your own. But if you're renting a room only, then typically the utilities are also covered. So that's what you can expect to pay for double room. But if you are aiming for like a single room with aircon, you can expect to pay around like maybe around 1,000 or even 1,000 or even 1,200 for single room aircon off campus. That's what you can expect to pay. And again, for this context, you might find something cheaper online, because it highly depends on the the building location, the building condition, and a lot of variables out there. So it really depends on what you get. But as you can see here, it is safe to say that for off-campus accommodation, it will be much more expensive compared to on-campus accommodation. So for off-campus accommodation, I would suggest you guys to actually go and check websites like propertyguru.com. In that website, you can actually go and check. This is not sponsored, by the way. I'm just throwing out a website that I used back then. Basically, you can use the website to sort of like filter through and look through the listing of the accommodation for off-campus accommodation. They have quite a lot of listing, be it like you are renting an HDB or you are just wanted to rent a room. So from there you can already see the sort of like the price ranges, and also the things that you get with what price that you pay, with the price that you pay. So yeah, that's that, I would say. But for school accommodation, on campus accommodation, typically you can directly check school website and they will have the most updated data there. Maybe a little bit of sidetrack, I would say if you're staying on camp, I would highly suggest for those of you who just started uni here or who just came here from school for the first time, I will highly suggest you guys to stay on campus, because I think it will be easier. First thing, it will be easier because they will help you do quite a lot of stuff, and then you also get to live together with your fellow friends, fellow students. So I guess for the first 1 year or first 2 years, it is highly suggested you guys to stay on campus, and it's also cheaper. And besides that, likely it's also the first time for you to be here, so staying on campus is much more easier for you in terms of, let's say you need to go to class, you need to join any activities or CCAs, you need to get to know people. A lot of pros, I would say, much more pros for you to stay on campus when you first came here. So yeah, next item is food. I guess the next item that would contribute or is also a second largest part of your living cost would be food. And for food, right, I think again this is very tricky to give you a range, because everyone has different lifestyle, and sometimes some people could be very frugal, some people eat a lot more, things like that. So it's a bit hard for me to give an exact number for you guys, but generally on average I would say $300 per month is sufficient if you're eating frugally. If you're being frugal with your food, you don't splurge on your food, I would say $300 would be sufficient. So let me break down the context. So let's say you're eating at a hawker center or canteen, or at your school canteen, let's say at NUS or NTU. Typically for a meal you can expect to spend around like $5 for a meal. It will be sufficient. Actually, if you are eating like economy rice, it is even more cheaper. I guess for for 2 vegetable and 1 meat side and with white rice, it will cost you around like $3.7 or like $4, that kind, or around $4. So as you can see here, it's quite doable. For 1 meal you can just spend around that number. And how I get that $300 per month is basically our budget. My one day would be like $10, and just multiply by 30, so you got $300 per month. So that's if you are not splurging and you're not spending, you eat frugally, I would say, in that case. And maybe I'll just give you a bit of picture so you get a bit of context. So maybe for the economy rice, I'll just drop this picture. Ding! Alright, so this is what you can expect to get for around like $4.2 or around $4.4, depending on which canteen, which hawker center that you're going into. So that's typically the price that you pay for a meal, around $5 you can get one meal. So that's why I mentioned you can actually, monthly you can actually just spend $300 on food. And for breakfast, if you do eat breakfast, and typically I would say if you just eat bread for breakfast, then it won't cost you a lot. It's quite cheap actually. The bread you can find bread at supermarket. You can just buy a loaf of bread, and then you just have it for your breakfast, and it doesn't cost a lot. So I actually discounted that from my calculation to make it just much more simpler. Or perhaps if you are doing intermittent fasting, or you have some sort of your own diet, or you never eat breakfast, then that cost can be ignored. So yeah, that's why I just try to budget $10 per day and multiply by 30. And actually, if you ask me, can it still be lower than that? It's still possible. I would say it really still possible, on the context that whether or not it's still possible for you to still get a decent meal, decent food for less than $300 per month. It's still totally possible. If you just eat the economy rice, you can actually spend less than that. But the reason why I put it $10 per day is because likely, at least for myself, there might be days whereby you don't really want to eat economy rice. Maybe on weekends you might want to eat something more delicious. So yeah, that's why I still give a bit of room there on the estimation for $10 per day. So that's that. So that's the context. And perhaps you're wondering, so what if we are going eating out, like let's say at a shopping center, at a cafe, or at a restaurant? So if you're eating out at a cafe or restaurant, I would say again the range is very huge, but typically you can expect to pay around like $10 plus or $20 plus. So depending on where you are eating lah. So that's why I mentioned that if you are eating frugally, you can still expect to spend just under $300 a month, or around $300 a month. But if you eat out quite often, not at hawker center or not at school canteen, then it might not be sufficient. Because let's say if you're going to like just a normal cafe or not a very fancy cafe, you can easily expect to pay around like $10 for one meal. But if you are going to like a more I would say atas shopping center, or more fancy shopping center or restaurant or cafe, then you can easily spend like $20 for one meal. So it really depends on your budget, and it really depends on your lifestyle. So yeah, from there you can just estimate accordingly how your lifestyle is and what is the budget that you need for your food. So maybe a bit of like context or information on the type of food that you can expect to have. Actually, let's say like you are going to hawker center, or you are going to your school canteen. For food at hawker center or food canteen, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are cheap food and they doesn't taste good. Usually they are quite delicious as well. And regarding like the hygiene, usually it's also quite clean. So you can actually easily find a lot of hawker center that are quite clean here in Singapore, and they also sell delicious food even though the price are cheap. So it doesn't mean that if you're eating at a hawker center, it means that the food doesn't taste good. So that's really not the case. You can easily find good food for good prices. So it doesn't have to spend like $10+ only then you can get delicious food. So that's really not the case. Maybe after you came here, you get to see it, you get to experience it, then you understand what I'm talking about right now. And also regarding food option, I would say Singapore is one of the best countries in terms of food options. No matter what your diet is, be it you're vegetarian or you're vegan, or you need to eat only halal food, that kind, then I guess Singapore is one of the best country that could accommodate to that, I would say. Because almost in every hawker center or in every, let's say, school canteen, they will at least have, let's say, one stall for vegetarian food, and also let's say one stall for halal food. So there will be at least one stall that you can actually buy food from, you can purchase food from. So I think it's also part of their regulation. So they actually regulated it in such way. So in terms of that, you don't really have to worry. That shouldn't be a problem. No matter what your diet is, typically you should be quite okay. You can easily find food around here in Singapore. Alright, next point, let's talk about transport. So for transport here, I think it's quite, Singapore I think is quite famous for its MRT and also buses. And it's quite convenient actually to get to almost everywhere using just the bus or the MRT, you can also easily Google up using Google Maps, and it will just show how you need to get to a place, what bus you need to take, what MRT you need to take, that kind, and where should you change buses or where should you change MRT. So that is quite convenient, and it's also relatively cheaper compared to other mode of transportation, much cheaper, I would say. Because for one trip you can just expect to pay like around like $2 each, under $3 as far as I know. They have like cap on maximum. I think the maximum is still under $3 for one trip. But actually, if you're staying on campus, right, let's say if you're staying at NUS or you're staying at NTU, we do have internal bus. So we do have internal shuttle bus, which means that if you are on campus, let's say let's say you're staying on campus, or you're just on campus, you need to go to class or you need to go to anywhere on campus, typically you don't have to take public buses. You can take our internal bus, which is free. So that means if you're staying on campus and you don't go out as much, it is safe to say that you don't really need to worry about the transport cost, because likely you won't have to pay anything, because it's already inclusive in the school fees every semester for the internal shuttle bus or other facilities. It's actually part of the facilities, I would say. So that's why if you're staying on campus or you're on campus, you don't really need public buses or public transportation. But if you're staying off campus, then you might need it. And actually they also have like some sort of concession package. So depending on how often you travel to school or you travel, then maybe using the concession card is cheaper for you as an option. For those things, I'll leave it up to you guys to actually go to check the website, because it's quite a rare case, I would say, for students to stay, especially for NUS and NTU, for them to stay off campus for the first 2 years. So by the time you reach here, you understand already which one is the best option for you, whether you need a concession or you don't need a concession. So yeah, so like I mentioned just now, it's quite convenient for you to get around here using just public buses or MRT. It is very convenient indeed, and it's quite cheap, I would say, around $2 for every trip, and a cap under $3. And yeah, that's what you can expect to pay. And let's say if you are taking like taxi or online ride hailing services, typically you can expect to pay like around like $10 to $20-ish. That's, I would say, the average that you can expect to pay lah. Because again, it also depends on the timing, because sometimes search timing, maybe like after office hour, or if it's weekend, a lot of people are ordering, then you have surge pricing, which is a bit more expensive. And where let's say if you're going somewhere at 3 p.m, usually it's not that crowded, then it might be slightly cheaper, and also depends on your distance of the travel. And for the ride hailing services here, like we don't have Uber here, because I think it got closed down or acquired by Grab a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Here we got Grab, or also another one is Gojek. So yeah, the price I would say is quite comparable as far as I know. You can either call a Gojek or you can either call a Grab here for online ride hailing service, and you can also have traditional taxi here. I personally never got traditional taxi service here. It might be pricier than the online ride hailing service, or in fact they have some integration with the online ride hailing service, so you can also order it from there. But yeah, typically you can expect to pay around like $10 to $20-ish for one trip. So as you can see there, it'll be much cheaper for you to actually just use public transport. The public transport here, by the way, is very good. I think for most of you guys, you won't really complain about the public transport here, I believe so. It's just quite good, it's quite clean, it's quite on time. Yeah, it's also not that expensive. Yeah, so that's that. So last but not least, I just want to talk about some random stuff, because I'm not too sure how to categorize this. So maybe like talking about things like this, laundry, like how do you do your laundry. I think this is also one of the most important thing, especially for students coming to Singapore to study. So for laundry, if you're staying on campus, typically you can use their laundry room. They will have laundry room there, so you can use it. And for NUS, I believe the same is for NTU as well. For the laundry room, typically we can expect to pay like $1. I think it's still the same, $1 for one load, per load. So for washing machine, let's say you pay $1 per load, and they will typically also have dryer for you to use. So after you wash it, you can just dry it directly. So also the same, you can expect to pay like $1 for $1 per load for the dryer machine as well. So every time you do a laundry, you can expect to pay like around like $2. So typically we do our laundry once a month. Sorry, not once a month, too long. Once a week. So once a week. So it means that $2 every week, $2 times 4, you can expect to pay like $8 per month for your laundry. But if you're staying off campus, typically you will have like, you know, your washing machine as well as your accommodation on off campus, or they have some sort of arrangement there. So you can use it. It might be already included in your in the rent that you pay. Or otherwise, if you don't have it, then you have no choice but you have to use the laundromat. For laundromat price, honestly speaking, I'm not that familiar with it because I don't think it's quite common, and in some area you can it's actually quite hard for you to find a laundromat. I think for area like in Orchard, City Hall, or Raffles Place, I don't think I ever see a laundromat there. So yeah, unless you're going to like some residential area, then only then you can find a laundromat, maybe like at Queenstown, maybe Tiong Bahru they have, I'm not sure, but I did see one at Queenstown. I think I also saw one at Cambridge MRT, which is actually close by to NUS. They have one laundromat there at the MRT station, on top of the MRT station, or the mall on top of the MRT station. So, but for the prices, I think it will definitely be pricier compared to, you know, the laundry room at school. So you can expect to pay more. But I'm not too sure about the prices. But typically, this is not the common cases for most of you. Like typically, your accommodation will already have like washing machine, or you know, your laundry room. So you don't really need to worry about this. Also, next thing is that, let's say, you know, for snacks, you know, toiletries and stuff like that, typically we also have, you know, dollar store here. I think I'm not sure if there's other dollar store, but typically here you'll go to Value Dollar. I think they are one of the most popular here and one of the largest chain for Value Dollar store. It is the dollar store in Singapore. You can expect, you know, to find, you know, snacks, you know, biscuits, chips, you know, basically what you can expect to find in a dollar store. You can also find toiletries and stuff like that, and typically the prices that you pay at the dollar store will, you know, obviously will be much cheaper than what you pay at a traditional supermarket. Typically it will be cheaper. I wouldn't say much cheaper because I don't really have the data with me, but typically you can expect to pay cheaper at dollar store, obviously. But for fresh produce, or let's say, like, you know, like fruits, like, you know, you need to buy some fruits, then obviously you cannot buy at Value Dollar. I think in the US the Value Dollar there, so not the Value, the dollar store there, they're already starting to try to integrate some sort of fresh produce as well. But here at Singapore, I think Value Dollar, they don't have fresh produce yet. So for fresh produce, like, you know, vegetable or fruits, you still need to go to supermarket or the traditional market. And also for some things like, you know, like, you know, instant noodle from, let's say, a Korean instant noodle, a more fancy instant noodle, then obviously you cannot find it at dollar store. Then you still need to go to you know, just to go to the supermarket, the local supermarket. So yeah, I guess that's about it. I hope that what I've shared here could be useful, could give you more insight on the living cost or what you can expect to pay here in Singapore. Really sorry if my explanation is still very messy. You know, I try my best to improve my explanation skill, especially in English, and I hope in my upcoming videos things could be better. And yeah, again, thanks a lot for watching this video. Hope it has been useful, and see you guys again in the next video. See ya.